Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
Today we're talking about The Wolverine. Released in 2013, directed by James Mangold, written by Mark Bomback and Scott Frank, and starring a lot of names I'm probably going to mispronounce. But Hugh Jackman, obviously.
Huge Jackman.
Huge Jackman. Tao Akamoto, Rila Fukushima, Hiroyuki Sanada, Svetlana Kodchenkova, Brian T, that one I can pronounce, and we'll skip a few people and go down to Famke Janssen, reprising her role as Jean Grey, although not she did, but she's not like actually there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. You did pretty well pronouncing those names.
Japanese names.
They were all correct.
Sweet, thanks. The interesting thing about this movie was that it was technically a sequel. I guess I read that it was originally going to be a prequel set after X-Men Origins Wolverine, but when James Mangold came on board, it became a sequel to The Last Stand. So yes. It takes place after X-Men 3, which I think makes a lot of sense and worked for me. Even though I guess in the comics, Wolverine goes to Japan before he joins the X-Men and stuff like that, right?
Correct.
It's like a prequel, yeah. But it was okay for me. I saw this in the theater and I was pleasantly pleased with it. What did you think first time watching it?
I was also pleasantly pleased with it. Over the years, I find myself defending this movie because people think that it's bad. I'm like, did we watch the same movie? I know it's not great, but it was leaps and bounds better than
X-Men Origins. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hands down.
And it's honestly better than The Last Stand. Not much better in my opinion, but it's definitely a step up from the previous two movies. But I enjoyed it when it first came out. I was more relieved
than anything
that it wasn't. I was, because I like The Last Stand, but it's more of a nostalgic thing for me. Like how old was I when I came out? I was like,
it was 2005
when I came out.
Yeah, 15. Yeah, probably.
I was 15 when that came out. So, and I was reading a lot of comic books when I was that age. So, I was heavily into Marvel and DC, like probably the most in my life at that time. And then when The Last Stand came out, it wasn't great. And then X-Men Origins Wolverine came out. That also wasn't
great.
Wasn't great. That's probably the worst one of the franchise. Like I can't think of one that's worse. Cause I even like Dark Phoenix more than X-Men Origins Wolverine.
I don't know, man. I've only seen Dark Phoenix once, but I remember walking out of the theater of Dark Phoenix being like, that was terrible. Not to get too far here because I know we're gonna review it soon, but it does have a few redeeming qualities, and I kind of feel similar. The way I feel about that is similar to Thor: The Dark World. If you change the villain, that movie is infinitely better. Oh, well, that could be.
But as far as the Wolverine goes, when it came out, I was just relieved that it was not bad.
Right, yeah.
Even if it had just been middle of the road average, I still would have been very, very happy that it just wasn't a bad movie.
Yeah.
Because as much as I love the X-Men franchise, it's inconsistent.
That's what I was going to say. That I was like, there are some really good X-Men movies, and then there are some really bad X-Men movies.
Yeah.
And this one, I think, kind of falls in the middle, but leaning more towards the good movies than the bad movies.
Agreed.
So I'm with you. After we had Last Stand, which I didn't hate either. I know that movie gets a lot of hate, and I understand why. But I don't necessarily hate that film. And then X-Men Origins Wolverine, which I don't really hate other than maybe Dark Phoenix, I don't really hate any of the X-Men movies. However, X-Men Origins is down at the bottom. It's not a movie that I could just pop in and watch because it's bad. And so, but then we had First Class before this movie, and First Class was kind of a breath of fresh air because that was a good.
I forgot. Yeah, I forgot about First Class. Yeah. See, with First Class, I really liked it when it came out.
Yeah,
but I don't think it holds up.
Really?
Yeah,
that's another one that
the last time I watched it, I was like, this is not as good as I remember.
Oh, that's a bummer. I remember really liking it, and maybe it was just because we had 2 bad X-Men films before it.
That's probably what it was.
I remember really liking it in the theater. Loved Hugh Jackman's cameo, of course. But that's not one of the X-Men movies that I don't really pop in the X-Men movies and watch them all that often anyway. But if I'm going to, it's going to probably be X2 or Days of Future Past. First Class is not really
Days of Future Past is the one. Yeah. That's the one right there.
Right. Which I'm excited about. That's going to be the next X-Men movie we talk about, and I'm excited to do that one. But I was pretty happy with it. James Mangold had worked with Hugh Jackman before on the movie Kate and Leopold, so and James Mangold has done some good movies. He had done 3:10 to Yuma before this. Copland with Stallone and De Niro, which was a good movie. And Kate and Leopold, like I said, which is not exactly an action film, but it was it was a fun little Hugh Jackman movie. This time around, yesterday, I decided to watch, and I had never seen it before, the extended unrated version of this movie, which I believe was only available, from what I could tell, just in my 2 seconds of research yesterday, I believe was only available on the 3D version of the Blu-ray, because it's not on my Blu-ray. And I also don't believe there's a 4K of this yet. I'm hoping when they do release a 4K that it has the unrated extended version on it, because it was actually pretty good. It had been so long since I'd seen the theatrical version of this. I don't totally remember. I don't know exactly what they added. I know it's a little bit longer, but none of the scenes seemed like, well, I'd never seen that before, However, there was some additional blood. I think, they added some blood into some of the fight scenes. And there were also a couple of extra F-bombs in the movie. So all said by Logan. And so it actually, of course, I kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was actually pretty good. So I hope they do release that on physical, because I actually looked to see if you can still buy the 3D version of the Blu-ray. And of course, it's like $300 or something. So it's ridiculous. So you can buy it digitally. That's how I watched it. I watched it the digital version. But yeah, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it this time around. It had been a few years since I had seen this movie. And there are a couple problems with it, but overall, yeah, I do think it's a pretty solid entry to the X-Men franchise.
Yeah, I agree.
Hugh Jackman got super ripped for this movie.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, as ripped as he is in this movie, he's even more ripped in the next movie. Like, Days of Future Past is peak Wolverine.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It doesn't get any more Wolverine than that.
Yeah. And I thought this was peak up until that movie came out, because he put on a bunch. He was already a big guy, but he put on a bunch of muscle and like spent a lot of this movie shirtless. So he's just like, he knew that he wanted to be as ripped as possible, and he did a good job.
And he actually hit up Dwayne Johnson for his techniques, or how he gets so ripped. And he didn't drink water for like a full 24 hours the day before he had a shirtless scene.
Yeah,
so his skin would look thirsty.
Right,
so he would be like as ripped as you could possibly be.
Yeah, I remember reading about that, and he said it gave him headaches, but it was worth it because of how he looked. Like it achieved the look he was hoping for. But I think he didn't really enjoy not drinking any liquids for 24 hours because it just basically dehydrated him.
That's part of the reason why he didn't want to return to Wolverine. I mean, obviously because he felt like he had done everything with the character, but he also didn't want to have such a restrictive diet anymore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things you don't see, is how the hard work that he has to train like every single day, lifting weights and stuff. And then the restrictive diet. He also, he was putting on muscle, so he's eating a ton, but he was eating a ton of like
Toast.
Well,
Wheat toast.
I was gonna say grilled chicken and like brown rice
Yeah.
probably and stuff and broccoli or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can understand that. And this was the speaking of him, having played Logan so much. This was the fifth movie where he was like the lead, sixth time playing Logan if you count the cameo in First Class.
I count the cameo.
So it was his sixth outing as Wolverine, although he didn't have to do the training for First Class. He just showed up and said his line and then left. But yeah, so he, that was already pretty impressive that he's playing Wolverine for, the fifth time. Little did we know that he was gonna still be playing the character, and we still have not seen his last performance as Logan because Deadpool 3 is yet to be released. So
he will be the longest tenured person in the same superhero role.
Yeah, that's true.
Because right now, Patrick Stewart holds that record because of Multiverse of Madness.
Right, I remember you saying that. Yep.
Yeah, once Deadpool 3 comes out,
he'll take it back.
Yeah.
And then Patrick Stewart will be like, I'll do another one.
I think I got one more in.
He'll just keep like. Then Hugh Jackman will be like, all right, I'll
throw that wheelchair out. I got one more in me. You gonna pay me how many millions of dollars to do this?
Right. So this movie starts off with during World War II, and Logan is in a Japanese war prison, just outside, I guess, Nagasaki, or in Nagasaki.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that they're about to get bombed, and so one of the Japanese soldiers releases the prisoners, and some of the other Japanese soldiers start shooting at the prisoners, and he yells at them, and then he goes to release Logan, and Logan's like, I'm better off down here, honestly. And he ends up saving that character's life, which is kind of the premise of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He saves his life. He basically Logan throws the guy down into the well. It's like a well bunker cell thing. And he throws kind of like the door of the bunker over him, and Logan gets hit with some of the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And saves his life. And I'm curious as to how long they were down in that cell, because he won't, at first he's, the Yoshida is the name of the character, wants to leave, and Logan's like, no, it's not safe. And then we cut forward to present day. And eventually we do see another flashback, at least I did in the extended cut, of him being like, okay, now we can get out. And I was just curious, because, with atomic weapons, there's radiation and everything. So it's just, I don't know how well they could have I mean, Logan could have probably, but Yoshida, I don't know how easily he would have been able to get out of that well.
Well, in the movie, it was probably no longer than a week, because Yoshida would have died.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Thirst and hunger. So,
and they don't say, it makes it seem like it's just a couple hours or something, and he's like, all right, we're good. But yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, I would say 2 days at least, a week at the most.
Right. Yeah, probably. That's probably pretty accurate. And when we flash back this movie does this twice, and I don't really love this trope. But when we cut back to present day, he wakes from a dream, and Jean Grey is there, and she's like, where were you? And he's like, Nagasaki. And she's like, that far back? And then we find out that is also a dream, and he wakes from a dream again.
Yeah.
This movie does that twice, where he wakes up from a dream and he's still in a dream.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like that. I thought that the inclusion of Jean Grey was unnecessary.
Really?
Yeah, because I understand why they did it, because it was a traumatic event. He basically has PTSD over her death.
Well, he hasn't forgiven himself either, I don't think, for having to kill her in the last
stand. I mean, but she was gonna wipe out everybody.
Right? Yeah.
But it didn't. I don't think it helped the story at all. It was just there. She was just there.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that.
We already know that he's grieving. I don't think we needed her to show up and just talk to him in dreams, because it didn't really further develop his character. It's just establishing what we already knew.
Right. I think I kind of feel like you need something to show the guilt that he feels over killing Jean. So whether that was using footage from The Last Stand or having Jean kind of show up like she did, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you need it a little bit. But I don't know if she does show up a lot. And I don't know if
Yeah.
you needed all the scenes of Jean Grey, but this one
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like you kind of do, especially since it ends with him. He's got his claws in her, you know. He's like, I don't want to hurt. He says, I'm not going to hurt anybody anymore. And she's like, too late. And
Yeah.
he, you know, sees that he's
The
stabbed her. And
first
then,
scene, I could agree. The first scene is fine. That
yeah,
that doesn't bother me. But when she just keeps showing up, that is like, we get it.
the
Like,
first,
let's
the
let's
first and
move
the
on.
last scene, I think I would keep. And you could get rid
Mm-hmm.
of the other ones. Because the last one I
Mm-hmm.
really like because she says, she's like, you got to stay with me. Basically, like, you got to die, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I don't need to anymore, you know, or something like that. I wrote it down. He says,
Mm-hmm.
she asks him to say, he says he can't because he's forgiven himself finally, you know, he's let go of the guilt, you know? And so I feel like that last
Mm-hmm.
scene was good. The first scene was good. The rest of them you don't really need, especially the
Yeah.
one where he's kissing her and then like it turns out to be Viper. Then he wakes up again as if it was a dream, but not really because that actually did happen. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
that one was kind of weird. Speaking of Viper, so that's the character played by I'm not going to get her name right again. It was if it's on here. No, it's not. It's the Russian woman.
Yeah.
I could have sworn I read somewhere back when this movie came out that they dubbed her over. But I didn't see it in IMDb trivia cuz there's a couple times where it definitely seems like ADR.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and like I said, I could have sworn when this movie was released that they completely like they got a different actress or whatever to do her voice. Like I don't know if her
Mm-hmm.
accent was so thick that they had a hard time understanding her or something. But
Mm-hmm.
I thought I remembered reading that they completely. Did you notice that at all when you were watching it?
Yeah, I noticed it a few times. But I didn't think that they got somebody to do her voice for like the whole movie.
And maybe I'm
Um,
wrong, but I could have sworn I read something about that but like it wasn't in IMDb trivia, so I don't know. Maybe they didn't.
mhm.
And I've never seen that woman in anything else. I looked at her IMDb credits. She does a lot of Russian films and TV. I
Yeah.
think this is like her only American movie, at least that I've seen. So I have no idea if that's her voice or if it's somebody else's voice, but I think it's somebody else's.
Huh. I guess I have to take your word for it because I'm probably not gonna watch this movie again anytime soon.
What did you think about Viper, the character?
Didn't like her.
Yeah, she's my least favorite character in the movie.
Yep.
I feel like they kind of, it almost seems like they felt like they needed another mutant in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and so they gave her like the Viper powers, but it doesn't really add anything other than like her kissing Logan and giving and like she's kind of has the venom spit thing happen in that scene, but then the venom doesn't really affect him. It's the thing on his heart.
Right.
So that didn't really have to be like that didn't have to be a Viper thing. But then like at the end when she's like peeling off her skin and stuff, it didn't add like anything to the movie, I don't think.
No, it didn't add anything. And she was too comic booky. This movie
Yeah,
is grounded for the most part. There are some comic booky scenes like
sure.
the
Yeah,
bullet
yeah.
train scene, which is awesome.
All right. Yeah.
But she she was too comic booky for this movie.
I agree. I think it would have been perfectly fine to have Yukio. I mean, I assume Yukio's a mutant with her ability to kind of see people's deaths.
Mm-hmm.
To have Yukio and Logan be the only mutants, you know, I think that
Mm-hmm.
would have been fine. Or you could had, I don't know, you could have Harada, the guy that's like the archer. He could have been kind
Mm-hmm.
of a mutant, and he's just like really good at archery, you know, like
Yeah, I mean, no, because there are mutants that like their ability is agility, like
right, yeah, yeah.
superhuman agility.
So that would
Like
have been fine,
Agent Zero in X-Men Origins of Wolverine.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
He was a mutant, but he didn't really have any outwardly flashy abilities. He
right.
was just freakishly good at his job.
And even in X Men Origins Wolverine, I know it's not comic accurate here, but Wade
Mm-hmm.
Wilson, before he becomes that horrible version of Deadpool,
Mm-hmm.
his it seems like his mutant ability is basically he's just like really good at swords and guns and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. He's fast and
Right.
agile and superhuman endurance and
Right.
he's like that is like the definition of superhuman, like just outside of reality.
Yeah.
So
And I think that would have worked within this movie perfectly fine. So yeah, Viper I don't think was necessary. You could have had her just be an evil doctor who is able to implant something into Wolverine's heart, without having to have her be a Viper character. How do you feel about Yukio?
I like Yukio.
Yeah, I do too.
I think she plays well off of
Hugh Jackman.
I really enjoy their dynamic. It's kind of weird because it seems like in the relationship, the both of them are kind of the straight man, but she's a little more sarcastic,
and
that definitely plays well off of Hugh Jackman's kind of, I wouldn't say stoic demeanor, but
grumpy demeanor.
He's his what?
Grumpy demeanor.
Yeah, grumpy. Yeah, he's grumpy for sure.
He's very grumpy. I like when they go to Yoshida's funeral, and Yukio's like, I want you to meet Shingen, I think is his name, who's Yoshida's son. And Shingen is like basically rude to him, and Logan and Yukio walk away, and Logan goes, "Anybody else you want me to meet?" Like he's just like like thanks for that.
I really like the after the prologue, the opening when he's in the wilderness and with the bear, and he he's marking his territory, and they're both marking their territory, which I thought was pretty cool. And he takes the bear out of his misery by pulling the
poison arrow out,
and he realizes it's a poison arrow.
Right.
And that bar fight scene, well, it wasn't really much of a fight, but that bar scene was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so I like the idea of, after the events of Last Stand, Logan has left Xavier and everything, and he's just living on his own, feeling guilty and drinking and stuff, but he also, still is like not going to let things like this just slide by, which is this bear. So when he gets to the bar, the hunter is talking about how they were attacked by bears or by a bear. And then Logan reveals that, well, yeah, you shot it with a poison arrow. It didn't kill the bear. And so it made him go crazy. And then he attacked you. And so I like how he stabs the guy with the poison arrow. And the guy's like, I don't dip my arrows in anything. And he's like, well, then you should have nothing to worry about then. And the guy realizes that it was the arrow from the bear that is now in his hand. I thought that was pretty great. This is also where we get a glimpse of Yukio's ability for the first time. She tells Logan that these guys aren't worth it. 3 of them are going to die in a truck, next week or whatever. And so he asks her on the plane on the way to Japan if she can see the future. And she gives him a vague answer. And so we don't really find out until later that she sees people's deaths. And she doesn't see like the full image, but she sees enough to kind of be able to tell. And I don't think I paid much attention to it the first time, but I do when Yoshida is pronounced dead and she's upset about it because it's Yoshida was basically her grandfather too. She goes, I didn't foresee this. I didn't see this. And you realize on a rewatch, it's because he's not actually dead.
He's not dead.
So I thought that was kind of a cool little, clue there.
Yeah, and when she foresees Logan's death, you think it's foreshadowing for this movie,
right?
But it's actually foreshadowing for Logan,
right? Which is pretty cool.
I thought was genius.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
I wonder if they.
Of course not.
Yeah,
of course
I was gonna say. I wonder if they actually knew.
It wasn't planned. It just worked out that way, and I thought it was brilliant.
Yes, and it's possible when they were writing Logan that they thought, "Hey, this is we could kind of connect this to the Wolverine." But yeah, I don't think they had that. I don't think James Mangold had Logan in mind yet when he was writing it, because she even says, when he's trying to get the thing off his heart. She's like, when I see your death, you're in a room like this, which obviously he's not in a room like that in Logan. But she also could have just been saying that because she was worried and because he does actually technically die there for a second. He flatlines and then comes back because he's Wolverine. But yeah, I like that too. I like how, you can definitely say it's a foreshadowing Logan.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think about the funeral scene with the Yakuza?
I'm on the funeral scene now.
Are you?
I like the funeral scene. I like when the Yakuza show up. We're introduced to I forget his name, the archer.
Harada, I think is his name.
Harada. Yeah, we're introduced to Harada, Mariko, Mariko's father.
Right. Mariko,
so
that's the other thing about this movie is Mariko is Yoshida's granddaughter. Mm-hmm. And Shingen is Mariko's father. Mm-hmm. And he's supposed to be, the heir to the Yoshida empire. Yoshida owns he's like the wealthiest the biggest corporation or whatever in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And before Yoshida, quote unquote, dies, he tells Shingen that he's not leaving the company to him. And he doesn't say in the scene who he's leaving it to, but it's, I think it's pretty obvious that he's leaving it to Mariko. And and Shingen is not very happy about that. And so then it kind of reveals, okay, that's why the Yakuza is kind of after her, because they know that she's going to be the person who, is like the head of the company, the person with the money, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find, so that Viper dream scene with Viper kissing Logan happens before the funeral, because we find out during the funeral scene that he's getting shot and he's not really healing very well or at all, which is very unusual for Logan, of course.
Yes.
I really like the funeral scene. I was curious, they don't tell you who Harada is, so you're not really sure if he's a good guy or a bad guy, but he is taking out Yakuza, so you kind of assume he's on the good guy's side. But I like how, the whole fight, Yukio does a good job. There's some cool, choreography in the funeral scene with her, and seeing Logan, rip guys apart with his claws is always fun.
Yeah. Harada, he's taking out Yakuza, but it's on the behalf of what is his name? I can't remember anybody's name.
The son?
The granddad, right?
Yoshida is the
Yoshida.
The one who died.
So he's working for Yoshida.
Right. Well, at the towards the end of the movie, he does say, because he's got like a clan of ninjas called the Black Clan, and he said the Black Clan has defended the Yoshida family for over 700 years.
Right.
But at the same time, Harada is also working with Viper, so it's a little. But I guess it's because Yoshida is not the nice guy who he claims to be at the beginning of the film.
Well, yeah, they're both working for Yoshida,
right?
And the Yakuza is just in the way,
right?
Yeah,
because Yoshida ends up kidnapping his own granddaughter. Mm-hmm. He gets Harada to bring her to the compound at the end of the film, but yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself here.
But if it wasn't for the Yakuza, he probably wouldn't have needed to do that.
Right, he probably wouldn't have. Right. That's true. That's a good point. The funeral leads into the bullet train scene, which is pretty sweet.
Yes,
like you said,
one of the best scenes in the X-Men franchise.
It was pretty great. It reminded me a little bit of the first Mission Impossible when they're fighting on top of the train.
Yeah.
But it's one of the best moments in the movie where they're having to jump over these lights that are kind of passing by. They're ducking under some and having to jump over other ones. And Logan gets the guy by pretending to go up. So the guy jumps up and gets smacked.
Oh, I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
And I mean, what's even more impressive is Logan's doing all this and not healing. So he's still got bullets in him and stuff.
Well, see, that's the thing. He's been around so long, and people forget that just because he can heal, that doesn't mean that he doesn't feel pain.
Right.
He's used to the pain.
Right.
And it's it usually subsides after a couple of minutes, but it's not subsiding, which is
right.
It's not healing. This is new for him.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, he's used to feeling pain and fighting through the pain, and his fighting style his technique is tailored to his ability to heal. He doesn't have to be stealthy. He doesn't
Right.
have to dodge because he can heal. He usually just takes it. So he's used to just taking it. He can't turn that off. So it's definitely interesting to see him, finally feeling real pain for an
Right.
extended period of time
Right.
and still having to fight through it.
Right. Yeah, I think it was pretty interesting. I think one of the themes of the movie is mortality, immortality, mortality, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because that's what we kind of skipped over this. Yoshida brings Logan to Japan because on the pretense that he wants to say thank you for saving his life back during Nagasaki.
Mhm.
But really what he wants is to take Logan's healing ability and give it to himself so that he can live longer or forever, and Logan
Mhm.
can actually then he'll still live a life but eventually die.
Yeah, he'll die an old man
Right.
like a
Right.
regular person.
He'll stop, he won't have his abilities anymore, and he'll just age like normal and then die.
Mhm.
And Logan's like, you don't want what I have. And so then Yoshida supposedly dies, and then we find out that that's not actually the case, and he still wants Logan and his abilities and all that stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think the theme of kind of immortality and mortality is kind of an interesting theme in the movie.
Mhm. No, I agree. It definitely. I think Logan does a way better job of this, but it deals with the theme of loss, and that
Mm-hmm.
that loss that comes with immortality, because you live because you live forever. Everybody
Everyone
you've ever
yeah,
loved will you have to watch them die, and
right,
that's just that's a weight. That's a burden that really only Logan can carry, and he's unwilling to give up his ability to heal so he wouldn't put that burden on another person,
right,
which is is really selfless. He's like, I'm not I want to die, but at the same time, I don't want you to have this burden. So no.
right, right. I think one of the things that this movie also shows is as much as Logan tries to kind of run away from it, he is, like you said, kind of that selfless, heroic person. Like he just can't not be that person.
Right.
Because
He
even in
has a
the
very he has a very strong moral code.
yeah,
um to the outside world, to people, outside looking in, it looks like he operates in the gray area, but he has a very strong sense of right and wrong.
yeah, yeah, I agree. After the bullet train scene, they go to Mariko and Logan are hiding out. They go to kind of a sleazy hotel in the bad part of town, and yet they're still found. And Mariko actually kind of saves the day here. She is
Yeah.
really good at knife throwing apparently or something, and
Because she needs to be.
right, yeah, I guess so, because she needs to be. And so she saves Logan. Logan ends up getting the bullets taken out by a vet, which was kind of funny. Always happens too in
Mhm.
these types of movies. It's always like a vet that ends up performing surgery on. I feel like I've seen that in another movie too, but I can't think of what it would be. But anyway,
Yeah.
um,
In this movie, it's actually, like, thematically, it's kind of clever because Logan is like an animal.
right,
He's like
he's the
kind of feral.
Wolverine,
So
right?
yeah.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah.
And so then they end up going to Nagasaki. She
Yes.
takes Logan to like a small house that I guess they own in Nagasaki, and she cooks some dinner, and we get a little backstory and all that stuff.
Hmm.
They end up bonding.
Now, that aspect I thought was a little weak. I thought that they could have made their connection a little bit stronger
Mm-hmm.
throughout the movie. It's not really until that scene where they actually kind of start to bond. And I get it. You want to build up to it, but I think the thing that kills it is their they lack chemistry, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it also is just she just seems and looks. I don't know how old the actress actually is, but she just kind of
Yeah.
looks young.
Mhm.
And so I think it would have worked better if it had been more of kind of father-daughter type kind of like protector relationship rather than having them kiss and
Yeah.
I think that would have worked a little bit better than because I agree. I don't think the kiss didn't really seem earned.
No, not
And
at all.
so, yeah, I agree.
And and don't get me wrong, I get what you're saying, but Wolverine is like 200 years
well, yeah,
old.
obviously,
So
but I mean, I'm just thinking about Hugh Jackman and
everyone
the
is a
actress.
child to him.
Well, yes, that is very true. Which should gross him out. Like, he should just not be. I mean, I guess even Jean would be a child to him, but yeah, he should just be like, no thanks.
Professor X is a child to him.
It's very true. I understand why they did it and everything, but yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like I don't think it felt earned. It was. We've talked about that before with other movies. You know, sometimes the chemistry or whatever just doesn't feel earned.
Yeah.
I do like the scene though where he realizes that he's at the location of where the bunker, the well, jail cell was. I thought that was actually pretty cool. And then I don't know if this is in the theatrical version, but we do see this is the flashback of when they actually leave the well and they come up out of the well and they see Nagasaki and it's just destroyed.
Yeah, it is
in the theatrical version.
The theatrical version.
I like that moment too. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, me too.
And Yoshida tries to give him a samurai sword in that scene. And then Logan says, keep it safe for me and I'll come get it, someday.
And I like the samurai code of honor like themes in the movie because Yukio calls him a Ronin. You're a samurai without a master.
Yeah,
which is 100% true. Like I said, he has a strong sense of honor and a strong moral code. He just because he's been through so much and lost so much, and because he's so old, he doesn't really have any guidance. He's been forced to guide himself, and even now, because this is after the events of X-Men: The Last Stand, his only really guiding force was Professor X.
right.
And he's lost that now, so he really is a Ronin.
It's true. After this, Mariko gets kidnapped again. But it actually leads to one of my favorite scenes, which is so Mariko was engaged to a guy named Naburo. Naburo. I wrote all these names down so I wouldn't mess them up, and I still mess them up. And so after she gets kidnapped, Logan is not able to quite catch up with her, and Yukio comes and gets him, and they decide to go pay Naburo a visit. And he's like in his like penthouse apartment with two women. So he threatens Naburo, and Naburo eventually finally reveals that he says that Yoshida almost brought the company to ruin because of his obsession with Logan. He was storing a bunch of adamantium at like that compound. Shingen hid it, expecting to be rewarded, and then Yoshida tells him that he's going to leave the company to Mariko, not Shingen. And so Mariko also wouldn't have married Naburo if she knew that she was going to get the company, is what he says. So he's the one that put a hit out on her with the Yakuza.
Right.
And so upon learning that, Logan throws him out the window. And I like how Yukio is like, how did you know there was a pool down there? And he's like, I didn't. I thought that was pretty great. So that was kind of interesting.
It was, but I remember watching it in the theater, knowing that was going to happen. I was like, of course,
yeah,
that the dad was going to put a hit out on the daughter. Like it did. I mean, what else?
Right?
Who else would it have been?
Shingen. So we've heard the name Silver Samurai once in the movie, and Silver Samurai obviously comes into play a lot in the third act. And so Shingen in the comics was. There's a couple different Silver Samurai, I think, in the comics, but Shingen was one of them. And so after the Black Clan ends up kind of invading the Yoshida compound, and I think they take Mariko, she gets kidnapped again, I guess. This is like the 5th time she's been kidnapped in this movie.
Yeah.
But Shingen almost looks to be killed in the scene, but then we see that he comes back and he fights Logan. This is after Logan takes the thing off his heart. And he puts on some samurai gear. And so I think that was supposed to be kind of a callback to like the original Silver Samurai.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see kind of it still doesn't look like the comic version of Silver Samurai because it's like a machine big version
Yeah,
of
it's like
Silver
a
Samurai.
mech. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess it looks a little bit more like the Silver Samurai, at least the one that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about the whole Silver Samurai thing and all that?
I wanted to like it, but it felt silly.
I agree. I remember, and I don't know if I could have put it into words, but I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when we talked about how you said this movie is, for the most part, fairly grounded. Yes, there are some comic booky things. It is a comic book adaptation after all. But the mech suit Silver Samurai thing felt like it went too far.
Yep. Agreed.
And I think if it had not maybe been so big, maybe if it hadn't been like a mech suit, maybe it would have been a little better. I don't hate it, but yeah, it felt a little silly.
Yeah.
And so that I remember being one of my disappointments seeing it in the theater was like it felt out of place within the film that it was in.
Agreed.
I do like the whole concept of it being Yoshida, and they don't really explain how he's able to take Logan's ability. Like he uses an adamantium sword, which is pretty cool, and heats it up and chops off of his adamantium claws, and then drills into the bone. And as he's like
basically sucks the adamantium out of his claws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's so somehow by drilling into like his bone claws, he's able to kind of reverse age himself. So that I thought was kind of interesting, a little weird. He also says he needs Mariko there, but they don't really explain. I guess it's so that Logan will show up. I mean, they're basically using her as bait.
Yeah.
I guess that's why he needs her there. But at first I was like, why does she need to be there? She ends up saving the day. She ends up stabbing her grandfather in the neck. And then Logan, of course, finishes the job. But the Silver Samurai part, I just, could have been better, I think.
Agreed. I think the dope thing about that came out of that scene is just Wolverine with the bone claws.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Having his bone claws come back. That was pretty cool. We skipped over it, but I really do like the fight scene between Shingen and Wolverine as well. That kind of the way that it's dark, but I like the lighting in that scene and everything. And of course, Hugh Jackman's. That's one of the scenes I was thinking of earlier when I said he's shirtless. He's doing that whole fight scene. And it's just huge. That was a cool scene. I like that scene a lot.
Yeah.
And I like how he actually has mercy on Shingen, and then Shingen stabs him, and Wolverine's like, well, all right. Like, and kills him. He's like, you asked for this, basically. And I think that's, it's kind of a cheesy line, but I kind of like it. Where Shingen is like, what kind of monster are you? And he's like, I'm the Wolverine.
The Wolverine.
So that was pretty great. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. We have, Yukio and Logan get on a plane and go wherever. And we can't talk about this movie without talking about the famous deleted scene that was not included in this movie. That's why it was deleted. That's a deleted scene, obviously. But Yukio gives, in the deleted scene, Yukio gives Logan a gift, and he opens it up, and it's a mask, and a very famous mask and gloves and suit. And he just kind of raises an eyebrow, I believe. It's been a while since I watched the scene. And she goes, interesting. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. And I remember reading that, everybody was like, why did you cut that out? That was so cool. And James Mangold wrote, I remember him saying the reason he cut it out was because he didn't know who was going to be directing like the next movie, if there was even going to be a next movie. And he didn't want to put like that burden on some other director, like that they had to include the suit, and so.
Yeah.
And I guess it would have been X-Men Days of Future Past was the next movie. So it would have been on Bryan Singer's shoulders or something to use it. I don't know.
Right. And there wouldn't have been any need for it.
Right. No, not really.
I mean, he could have worn it in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, not in the past, but yeah, he could have worn it in the future scenes.
How did you feel about it? About the
deleted scene?
About or the actual suit itself or the mask itself.
It looked cool from what I remember. Like I said, I haven't watched the scene recently, but I remember reading also that everything was entirely 3D printed, so it wasn't like an actual, like the gloves weren't like nobody actually kind of made that costume. It was just 3D printed to look how it looked. But I remember thinking it looked pretty cool. I mean, I don't know how it would have looked on Hugh Jackman's face if it was an actual mask and everything, but
see, that's what I was thinking about. I was like, it looks cool in that
box.
case,
Yeah.
but how is it gonna look on Hugh Jackman?
Right.
Like, I know I'm in the minority, but the Wolverine costume is awesome in the comics.
Yes.
I think
I don't know how well it'll translate.
Ridiculous in live action.
Yeah. I am curious.
You couldn't make it comic book accurate. I mean, you could get it kind of close, but
I don't think you could do. Yeah, I don't think you could take it straight from the comics where he's got like the bare arms and stuff. I think that would look kind of ridiculous. The mask, I do think you could make the mask because I've seen people cosplayers with Wolverine masks that look pretty sweet. So I feel like you could make a pretty decent mask for a live action Wolverine. I don't know if it should be Hugh Jackman in Deadpool 3 or if because eventually they're gonna Marvel, now that Marvel has the rights to the X-Men, surely they're gonna
they're gonna do it.
Recast it's Logan and have somebody else in the costume, and I think that could be kind of cool. But
yeah, we're going to see the costume.
Yeah.
The question is, how accurate will it be?
Right.
And I don't think it's going to be as accurate as people want it to be. At least not be accurate and look good. Because I've seen cosplayers. I'm like, that looks cool for cosplay.
Right. Yeah.
Do I want to see that in a movie?
Right.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. So we'll see. I guess I don't know. We'll see.
Same thing is like the Captain America costume.
Yes.
In Avengers 2012.
Right.
That was, to me, that was cosplay. If I saw that at Comic-Con, that's dope. That looks terrible in the movie.
That costume has not aged well, because I remember when the movie came out, I remember thinking I liked it because it looked like Captain America.
I have never liked it. Never.
I did. The only thing I didn't like about it was how the kind of cowl met with the neck. That part has always, it's just like they couldn't figure that part out very well, and it didn't look, that part never has looked great. But I liked the bright blue and red and everything. I thought it was fine. However,
he had on pajamas.
I was gonna say, however, now that Endgame has come out, I think I love the Endgame Cap suit. So I think I don't want to see a Wolverine costume that is 100% comic accurate, because that would be spandex probably with a ridiculous looking mask, and I don't know.
I personally think that they could make it work if they make it camo or brown and yellow instead of blue and yellow.
Yeah. Which would still be comic accurate, because he's had brown and yellow suits before.
He's had brown and yellow. He's had blue and yellow. He's had black and gray. He's had navy blue and orange.
He just can't make up his mind.
Yeah, but I think after the classic look, the most famous look will be the brown and yellow look.
Yeah, I agree. We've never really seen, not to jump the timeline and talk about the end of another movie, but like the end of X-Men Apocalypse, they had pretty close to accurate 90s costumes for some of those characters.
I thought they looked pretty good in that scene.
But I was gonna say, other than that, we've never really had any X-Men accurate costume. I mean, Psylocke in Apocalypse is pretty accurate. But for like Cyclops and Storm, like the actual X-Men group, like we haven't really seen very many accurate costumes.
I would go as far as saying First Class, because they looked, the X-Men looked how they looked in the 60s.
Yeah, that's pretty close, probably.
Yeah, but as far as like the 80s and 90s, the closest thing we've got was the last scene in X-Men Apocalypse, which I really liked. It's crazy to say, but that may have been the best scene in the movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll talk about that one too when we get there. But yeah, I agree with you. And it made it actually kind of made me mad only for a moment when when like the teaser for Dark Phoenix came out and they were in different costumes. I'm like, this movie's supposed to take place in the 90s and you had the best costumes at the end of Apocalypse.
And that's why James Mangold cut the Wolverine costume scene out of this movie.
Exactly.
To prevent that from happening.
Exactly. So I 100% understand why he cut it out. I like that he at least included it as a deleted scene and didn't just like keep it, hidden in some vault. But I understand why they cut it out for sure. And it's nice to know that they, thought about it and put it in, did a take with it. But yeah, I don't think the movie is worse for not having that scene in the movie,
Nah,
it's fine.
It definitely didn't make a difference, but it was, it was purely fan service. That's all it was fan service.
Exactly. Before we wrap it up, Marco Beltrami does the score for this film. Did the music
great score.
Yeah, so Marco Beltrami is not somebody who, aside from maybe the Scream movies, if you were to play like any of his music for me right now, I probably wouldn't be able to place it. You know what I mean? But his music does serve the movies that he scores very well. And
Agreed.
I noticed, I couldn't hum a single bar of this score for you right now. It's made me like, John Williams, who comes up with these, very iconic themes and stuff.
Bombastic scores.
But I remember thinking, especially the scene where Logan's getting shot with all those arrows that are attached to like the wires, and he's struggling to move forward. The music in that scene, I remember thinking, this is really good. This is a good score.
Yeah, I agree. The music in that scene, as far as like just the actual movie, is probably the best. But I really like the music that plays at the end credits.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good too. Yeah, I agree.
I thought that was really good. I was like, man, I wish we could have heard more of this in the movie.
Right.
But yeah, Marco Beltrami did, like you said, his music serves this movie very well. Another thing I really like about this movie is the way it looks. There's some beautiful shots in this movie.
Yeah.
Especially when Logan is fighting the dad.
Shingen. Yeah. That's the scene I was talking about. Yeah. When he goes, I'm the Wolverine. That scene is great.
Yeah. That scene is awesome. The scene where they're at the sleazy hotel and Hugh Jackman is standing on the balcony in the rain, and the lighting in that scene is amazing because like the key light behind him is orange, and then like the field light is blue, and it just it's just with the rain coming down and like his hair or over his forehead, like it just is. That's a beautiful shot. So yeah, I think that's one thing that this movie doesn't get a whole lot of credit for is the cinematography of it. It's a pretty good looking movie.
Yeah, I agree. One small thing that I really like about this movie that I failed to mention earlier is this might be weird, I don't know, but I really like Hugh Jackman's hair. So
bro, I was gonna say the same thing.
He's always like,
I really like his hair.
If you go back to like the first two X-Men movies, he's got like this crazy, they did as best they could to make him have the Wolverine hair, and it's this big, obviously they put a lot of hairspray and everything into it.
In retrospect, it looks horrendous.
Right.
Like when the movie came out, we were kids at the time,
right.
So it looked awesome.
Yeah, and it was the first time. It was our first live action Wolverine, and so we were like, "This is amazing!" Yeah.
And then now, 20 years later, and then his hair gets progressively better with each movie. By the time we get to Days of Future Past, his hair
figured it out. Yeah,
is perfect.
But I've always liked it in this one. It's like it's pretty short, but it just kind of sticks up just a little bit, kind of on the sides. And
it's kind of messy. Yeah. It's kind of shaggy. Like he's not really, it sticks up on the side. It's kind of like he just rolled out of bed and just, and just kept it moving.
And so I thought, I remember thinking like, I was like, they did a good job with that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Going forward and, just looking back, his hair was not good. In those
as much as I love the movies,
those first three. Oh man. Yeah.
All right, well, Stu, I'd love to hear what you would rate the Wolverine.
I I like I said, I've always liked this movie. Again, I found myself defending it. It's not great,
Right.
but it's really good. It's solid. It's one of the better X-Men movies. It doesn't go as deep as I wanted it to go, but they do rectify that in
Logan.
later movies, specifically Days of Future Past and Logan. But it's definitely a step in the right direction for Logan's character as well as the franchise as a whole. So that being said, I'm gonna give it a very strong 3.5 out of 5 Wolverine claws.
Yeah, you and I are on the exact same page.
Mm-hmm.
I really like this movie. There are some problems that I have with it, and we kind of said how we feel about it right at the beginning of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of in the middle, I think, of the X-Men movies, but leaning more towards the good ones. And
Mm-hmm.
so I agree. I'm giving it a very strong 3.5 samurai swords.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, I kind of, I had a good time watching it yesterday. Like I said, I watched the extended version and I thought it was pretty
Mm-hmm.
good. So yeah.
Yeah,
It's
if they
fun to
if they
revisit it.
had just gone a little bit deeper with the themes and made it a little less comic booky in
Certain scenes, yeah.
some areas, because it's a bit tonally inconsistent, just a little bit,
Right.
and kind of it fleshed out the Silver Samurai just a little bit more. This movie will be much stronger.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we'd love to know what you think about the Wolverine. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can also tweet at us or comment on our Instagram. Both handles are at CinemaHeroes. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, leave a comment down below what you think of the movie. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you however you want to reach out to us. I think that about wraps it up for this episode, though. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.